Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I know a few of you are already here waiting for the live stream to start. I'm going to get kicked off in a few minutes because it's still a couple of minutes until 7:30. I'm going to give a lot of introductions, sort of who I am and what I'm here to talk about. There will be the opportunity during the session to ask questions through the chat, which some of you will be seeing. But I'll mention that quite a few times throughout just to give you the opportunity if you want to. So we still have a couple of minutes to go until about 7:30. So I'm just going to hang fire just for a minute, just until everybody's here. So no, thank you everybody, by the way, for tuning in, for giving up your time on this evening. And we will get kicked off in just a couple of minutes. I hope you're all fed and watered and have a drink ready. I'm going to try not to keep you too long because I do appreciate you're probably going to be ready for a bit of a break, especially any parent or carer that's homeschooling, as I'm sure most of us are, which has made for an interesting couple of weeks, hasn't it? So once again, a couple of minutes and we will get kicked off properly. So yeah, bear with us. So just for the few of you that are joining now, the live stream will kick off at 7:30. Apologies for sounding a bit like a broken record, but I know a few of you are probably thinking, well, why hasn't he started talking yet? We'll just wait until we can get kicked off at 7:30, just to give everybody the opportunity to come in. And then I'll introduce sort of myself and the kind of things that we're going to talk about. I'll also plug the chat as well. There will be the opportunity to ask questions during the presentation, and I'll try and get them answered by the end. So bear with us for just the last couple of minutes and then we'll get going. Okay, so we're going to give it one last minute and then I'll get kicked off just to allow the last few to join us. Anybody that is interested, we did a live stream earlier. This is the second of two live streams that we've done for Parents and Carers Today. Both of them, the content will be the same, but they will both be available to view on the Lincolnshire Safeguarding Children Partnership YouTube channel, which is where we're viewing this right now. They'll be available just a little while after the live stream has concluded. So if there is anybody that wants to watch any of it again, or wants to sort of send it to a parent or carer that they know probably would be interested, they will be available for you to view. So last minute to go and then we'll get kicked off proper. Excellent. Okay, well, according to my clock, it's 7:30, so I'll get started because I don't want to keep you all for too long. I do appreciate everybody that is taking the time to sit at home and watch this, and just thank you so much. My name's Dan Holbrook. I'm the online safety officer that works in Lincolnshire. I've been in this role for a little over 10 years, and the main part of my job is to talk about online safety. The bulk of my work is done in schools, in classrooms. I go all around the county with a colleague of mine talking about how children and young people can keep themselves safe online. But one of the common things that is always raised is the fact that a lot of parents and carers want to get a little bit of input around online safety. And that's kind of what I'm here to do today. I'm not here to frighten anybody or scare them about the internet. It is a brilliant tool, but there are obviously risks involved. And I just want you to know that at the end of the session, I'm going to signpost you to a few places that you can go to get help for some more guidance. I'm going to reference a few organisations and a few websites that may help. For anybody that's just joining, I've mentioned a couple of times there is a chat feature in this live chat, and what I'm asking you to do is, if you do have any questions, if there is anything that you want to know that maybe we haven't talked about through the presentation, please drop us a question in the live chat, and I've got some time at the end to try and answer some of those for you. But thank you so much for being here, and I'm going to get started proper. So the reason I'm here today is to help you feel a little more comfortable about letting your children go online. And one of the big issues that we have is online safety as a concept can sometimes be a little difficult to understand. So what I always like to do is I always like to start with a bit of a quote. Now, this is a quote I've been using for quite a few years. I can't take credit for it. It's from a study done in about 20 years ago now. But it's trying to explain what the ethos of online safety is, or e-safety as some people still call it. Internet safety or online safety is all about teaching children skills that they're going to need in later life. It's about teaching them to keep themselves safe online, a bit like road safety or learning to ride a bicycle or learning how to swim. Now, we know that swimming pools can be dangerous places, kids can fall off bikes and what have you, but what we do is we use it as an opportunity to teach them that skill. We put barriers in place to a certain degree. So when they ride a bike, we get them to wear a helmet. When they cross a road, we encourage them to use special crossings, wait for the green man, look both ways before you cross. And internet safety is a little bit like that. We can put in place certain systems, we can put in place certain rules that will safeguard our children, but the best way to keep them safe is to teach them to spot those dangers for themselves, because online safety is important for adults as well as children and young people. Okay, so I think the best place to start when it comes to all of this is to look at some of the technology that children are using. Now, one of the questions that we always ask children is to talk about the apps and the games that they use, what they enjoy, what they like. We try and get them to talk about the positives because in some ways it disarms them a little bit. They're not expecting us to come from a positive stance in regards to sort of online services. So on your screen, you can probably see now there are 6 different logos for popular apps used by children and young people, both in primary schools, special and secondary. Now, some of these apps you will recognise, but I'm pretty sure if you showed them to any of your children, they'd be able to spot all 6 and tell you exactly what they are and what they do. Now, I just want to really quickly go through some of these, but I also want to show you sort of the level of interest in the county. I want to show you how many children and young people, certainly in secondary schools, use these popular apps and services. Now, YouTube, I'm going to be honest, is a godsend for a lot of parents and carers at the moment. Anybody here who is homeschooling, I take my hat off to you, because we're all trying to struggle through. It's not something easy, as anybody that's trying to teach their child about fronted adverbials and how to do a long multiplication or division. Now, YouTube is a great resource. It does have a lot of tutorials on things that can help us as adults, how to cook, how to bake, how to fix things. But one of the most important things that I think is good to promote is, especially during these current restrictions, YouTube is a great resource to allow your child or young person to learn a new skill or get involved in a hobby. So whether it's gymnastics or magic tricks or learning to do a rainbow flick in football, there are a lot of videos out there. It is a fantastic resource and hugely popular amongst children. Most of them say they want to be YouTubers when they grow up, and I'm pretty sure you've heard of most of the ones that your children do like. Okay, now the next one is an app called Snapchat. The ghost on the yellow background. It's what we call ephemeral messaging. It's just a fancy way of saying when you send a picture to somebody, after a certain amount of time, that picture's going to disappear. Now, obviously, we're going to have to talk a little bit more about disappearing pictures because, let's be honest, what we find a lot of teenagers use this disappearing picture app for is maybe one of the things that gets them in to a little risky situations, okay? But Snapchat is designed to be fun. It's designed to take the pressure off things like Instagram and Facebook, where a picture can be there for a very long time on a profile. Snapchat is about having a bit of a laugh and sending a picture to your friends that'll make them smile, and then at the end of the day, it can disappear. These images can still be copied and saved, and there's no way of knowing whether they do truly disappear straight away. But it is one of the primary messaging services that children and young people use, so it's always good to have a little bit of an understanding of what it does and why it's there. Now, the next logo along is one that you may not recognise, but when I say what it is, the majority of parents with children in primary schools will go, yeah, I've heard of that. It's an app called Roblox. Now, Roblox is a gaming service. It's kind of like a bit like a platform, and people make games that your children can play and access. Some of them are incredibly popular. There's games like Arsenal. You may have heard of things like Obbies or Tycoons. They're just different types of games. And anybody that has children in primary school will probably heard of things like Imposter and Adopt Me. Roblox is designed to be a safe service for children and young people, so it does minimise a lot of the risks. It has a chat feature whereby certain words, certain swear words, numbers, web addresses and email addresses cannot be shared through the service. Now, it's not perfect because with the best will in the world, children and adults are going to find ways around it, but it is designed to try and minimise that risk as much as possible. Roblox has been in the news because a lot of the games that children play have found people have found ways to put inappropriate content within to them, but it is not images or videos, it is content using words and suggestion. And what we always encourage people to do is we should always take responsibility a little bit for the platforms that we use and that our children use. And if you do see anything inappropriate, it's really important to report it to Roblox because they are very, very keen to get that removed from their service. Okay, now we're going to come to the bottom row. And now this is where we start bridging that gap between primary and secondary school. The first one is an app called TikTok. Now, anybody that has children that they've spent time around in outdoor situations that get bored easy, you'll probably find they'll stand there and do wavy dances with their arms. And TikTok is an app that's all about lip syncing. It's all about dances. It's about you filming a video to some sort of backing track. It is a profile-based service, so a bit like Facebook where you have a profile that people can visit and access all of your videos. It does have public and private settings, which of course we'll talk about in a little bit. But TikTok, hugely popular with children and young people of all ages because a lot of the dances are quite fun and a lot of them become sort of sensations that kind of spread across social media. Not all of the songs are appropriate, and like a lot of other apps that we're talking about, it does have a 13 age limit. So Snapchat, Instagram, even YouTube does have that age restriction because of the personal information that they collect. So not all the content that our children are going to see is going to be appropriate. So it's really important to just keep that in the back of your mind and just make sure that you use some of the privacy settings that now come with TikTok to give you as a parent a bit more control over what they do. Now the next one along, the green phone, is of course WhatsApp. Now I'd love to say that most children use these, but most of the time it's group chats with family where this app becomes important. Some of them will use it with their friends to keep in touch, which is especially important at the moment, but we use it as a way to share things. with large groups of people, whether that's pictures or videos. Most of us, I think, have probably come across WhatsApp in our time. A brilliant service, but sometimes not used in the best way because people generally spam a group with GIFs, with emojis, and two people will go off and have their own conversation, and it can sometimes get a little bit distracting. But the idea behind the service is really, really great. And the last one that I just want to mention is an app called Instagram. Now, Instagram is generally where people go to share pictures of what they're eating or what they look like, which are both sometimes classed as quite weird things. But Instagram, hugely popular service, and both Instagram and WhatsApp are owned by Facebook, as I'm sure you're aware from WhatsApp being in the news about their privacy setting changes recently. Instagram does have a profile system, so you can share a picture or a video and people can write comments or like. It can be a toxic place in the sense that people use the number of followers they have and the number of likes they obtain as a measure of their own self-worth and popularity within their school, within their peer group. So used sensibly and safely, and maybe understanding that some of the things they see in there are not particularly true, because as we all know, not everything we see on social media is what is happening in the real world. It can be quite a positive place for artists to share the work that they do, for musicians to share their kind of hobbies, skills, and the kind of things that they love. All of these apps can be used in incredibly positive ways, and we are finding that at the moment during this current pandemic that we are using it as a way to keep touch with the people that matter. So, used in a sensible way, these are a brilliant bit of kit. And what we found out is that actually a huge number of children and young people in Lincolnshire do use these apps. These are statistics taken from a study we did last January. And this study was primarily around bullying and online bullying, but we took it as an opportunity to try and identify the kind of virtual spaces that children are visiting. And what we found, no surprise, is YouTube, Instagram, TikTok and Snapchat were hugely popular social media platforms. Now, online gaming as a whole has also seen quite an uptick in the number of users, whether it's Fortnite or Minecraft or Among Us or even some of the games on Roblox. The online community, especially around gaming, can be quite a positive one. Unfortunately, it can also be a negative one as well. The thing that I think is important when it comes to these apps is this is just a snapshot of some of the apps and services that children and young people access. We've not included Facebook because, let's be honest, any child or young person you talk to will tell you Facebook is for old people, which I take as a personal slight, but it's not a space where they feel they can express themselves. So some of the apps and services that they will use all the time, it's quite likely we've never heard of. When it comes to things like gaming, there are a lot of games that they play, and the first time I hear about it is when we're talking about it in a classroom. It is impossible to stay up to date with all the different services that children are using. So take this as an opportunity to learn alongside them. If they mention an app or you read about something and you want to learn a little more, go to your children. They are the experts when it comes to using all of these things. And actually, the majority of the time, if they haven't used it, they will know somebody that has. Let's see it as an opportunity to tap in to their understanding and to learn a little bit more about the online space that they inhabit now. Okay. Now, I could talk about the positive side of the internet for the next sort of 4 hours, but I appreciate we all have other things that we need to do, and actually it's not the main reason that I'm here. So I am going to move on to what we feel is one of the most important bits about online safety, and that is, of course, the online risk. Now, I have said before, and I do say it a few times, I'm not here to scaremonger, I'm not here to frighten anybody, and I'm certainly not here to encourage you to kick your children off the internet. I'm going to be quite open and honest about some of the risk that is present on the internet, but I'm going to talk to you about some of the things that we deliver to children in schools, whether they're in year 6 or 7 to 10. We do talk to them in an open and honest way about some of the things that do occur. But again, we are trying to encourage them to see the risk, to identify it themselves, and to also know what to do if they do feel a little bit unsure. Okay. Now, we are going to look at 3 different areas for the last bit of this session. And these are the 3 main risks that we find young people want to learn about, and that we feel covers the broad age between primary and secondary. Grooming, bullying and content are different kinds of issues depending on your age. Things like content may not be as big a risk to 16, 17-year-olds as it is to 6 or 7-year-olds, but certainly some of them can impact even on adults. So talking about these kind of things, and some of the things that I am going to mention, hopefully should benefit anybody in your family. Okay. Now, the first one that we do want to talk about is grooming. Now, grooming is the reason that I do have a job. It is one of the biggest risks for children and young people online, that stranger awareness, because grooming can have quite long-term consequences. In a nutshell, grooming is sort of like a process. It is something that a person will do to another person. Now, when we try and describe this to children and young people, we talk about building a relationship. And that relationship can be a positive one or a negative one. But the ultimate aim of this relationship is to exploit that child or young person. Now, this can happen in unhealthy relationships amongst adults. It can happen to children and young people through social media and through gaming sites. And this is the same sort of process that occurs when an individual is radicalised. So it is quite an important behaviour to try and understand. Now, one of the things we do find is that children do have an awareness of strangers. When we ask the question, what is a stranger? The majority of children will quite happily put their hand up and tell us it's a person that we don't know. Brilliant. That is exactly the answer that we're after. The problem is that sometimes children carry on with that answer and it kind of becomes a little bit more distorted. One of the memories that I have in schools is being in a primary session talking to reception age children and talking in a very open and honest, way about the internet safety. And the only question I asked, with no ulterior motive at all, is what is a stranger? And this young 4-year-old girl put her hand up right at the front of the class and said, a stranger is somebody you don't know who's going to kidnap and kill you in a white van. Now, it's probably one of the first times in my life that I've ever been lost for words, but it also got me thinking how that child views the world around them. I also do feel sorry for anybody that does drive a white van. You do get a bit of an unfair rep. But it is the kind of message that we were taught when we were children, that a stranger is a dangerous person. And actually, we encourage children to talk to strangers all the time, whether it's on their first day at school, whether it's the bus driver, somebody in a taxi, somebody at the shops, people that they may not know, but yet we give that conflicting advice. Now, what we do find is that if you ask a child to draw a picture or describe what a bad stranger will look like, generally that ideal is that it's a 50 or 60-year-old man. Now that's a bit problematic because then it means that they're looking for the wrong kind of risk. And actually, an individual that grooms another person can be any age. Anybody over the age of 18, adult, male or female. Yet these are the risky individuals that we kind of want children to either avoid or certainly to identify that they may be a concern. So what we do in schools at the moment is we try and teach them how a person will trick you. The resource that we use has been created by an organisation called CEOP, C-E-O-P. That stands for the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Centre. It's an organisation that is police-led, it's part of the National Crime Agency, and they're based in London. They've been around for about 16 years now, and they create a lot of great resources that parents, carers and schools can use to teach their children how to stay safe from individuals that may try and exploit them. Now, this resource is taken from a pack called Play Like Share. And all they've done is created some chat logs to help children and young people identify the different tactics used. And there are basically 4. Bribery, which of course is offering something for something in return. Flattery, which is saying nice stuff, and we'd be lying if we said it didn't always work on us. There are threats, and of course things that are too good to be true. Now, when we talk to children and young people about this, it's important to remember that each of these can be used in different ways. But the one that causes a lot of the harm are the threats and the bribery. The blackmail, the trying to encourage them to do something they don't want to do, but by using a threatening and aggressive stance to do it. Now, these sort of things can make the child or young person feel that it is their fault that these things have happened. And actually, that's quite worrying, because then it puts that child in that situation where they feel they cannot ask anybody for help. And that's worrying, because we want children to tell us when they feel unhappy on the internet, and certainly if they ever felt unsafe. Now, one of the problems that we do get when it comes to this kind of behaviour and these kind of tactics are flattery will get them on board. Offering something for nothing or offering a bribe is a great way to try and encourage them to do what the offender wants them to. But by using adults as a threat, it can put the child in a situation where actually they're scared to tell you. Because children's biggest worry is that when something goes wrong on the internet, that they are going to be the ones that miss out. So when it comes to the tactics, we kind of talk to children about how they can spot those by using these different chat logs. But the most important thing that we try and encourage them to remember is that there are a lot of nice people on the internet. There are a lot of nasty people on the internet, but there are also a lot of people who pretend to be nice, who aren't really a nice person at all. And actually, if you think about it, haven't most of our children lied about who they are on the internet? Because apps like Instagram, TikTok and Snapchat have a 13 age limit. And we sometimes bypass that as an acceptable lie, acceptable mistruth. So actually, children are quite used to lying about who they are, but very trusting when it comes to talking to that other person. Now, the problem with all of this is that there are issues that do arise that are quite serious from an individual being groomed. It can make them feel isolated, they can have low self-worth, it can have a severe impact on their mental health and well-being. And the cause of this is sometimes the kind of content that the individual will try and encourage them to share. Now, I do apologise that the next thing we have to talk about is going to be quite a difficult subject, but it is one that certainly in secondary schools is the most vital conversation that we have. Okay, what we're going to talk about next is the sharing of indecent images. Now, we use the word sexting, but children, young people in Lincolnshire, more teenagers than children, will recognise the term as nudes. Now, the problem that we have is that this is an illegal behaviour. And a lot of these individuals, using that threat, using that bribe, will try and encourage a person to share that naked picture and then use it as a way to encourage them to do things that maybe they don't want to do. There is also that pressure on children and young people that they don't want others to see it. So the threat is simply, if you don't do as I say, I will share this with other people. And actually, that can put that child in a really, really difficult situation. Now, sexting is the conversation that we have with year 9s and 10s at the moment. When it comes to younger years, we talk about this in a very, very different way. And it is not a behaviour that we look to encourage in any relationship at all, purely because of the issues that may arise from it. Certainly, if you're a young person in an unhealthy relationship, it can give your partner a bit of a hold on you. Now, the law is very, very simple when it comes to sexting. Since 1978, there have been 3 offences linked to this kind of behaviour. The offences are taking an indecent image of an under 18, storing an indecent image of an under 18, and sending or sharing an indecent image of an under 18. That's not 16, that is under 18s that this applies to. There is also a law that applies to adults, and that is relating to over 18s whose image is shared, indecent image is shared without their consent. And the terminology we use to describe that is revenge pornography, and that has been against the law for a few years now. Now, the problem is when it comes to sexting is that children and young people have very, very different influences to the kind of influences we had. We had a watershed, so anything past 9 o'clock at night, had to be acceptable for the whole family. But now children and young people, their models, their idols, some of their celebrities have been doing this sort of behaviour. There are some individuals that are certainly quite famous for sharing these kind of images, and their lives are very, very different because of that. We spent a lot of time going around schools over the past few years challenging that behaviour and trying to get children and young people to understand why somebody would ask for it and whether or not it actually benefited their relationship. And actually what we found is young people are quite switched on when it comes to the understanding, but it's in that moment when that individual that they love asks, that's when the problems do arise. Because sexting is not just a behaviour that we see from adults towards children and young people. It is something that young people will share amongst themselves within peer groups, within year groups. And it can cause the victim huge, huge distress when this does happen. So the one thing that is vital is that if this does occur, that a child or young person feels confident in talking to somebody about it, and whether that is you as their parent, carer or guardian, or somebody at school, then that is still the vital thing. You can talk to Lincolnshire Police, you can call them and get advice. They are not looking to arrest your child and put them in prison, even though the law has been broken. We are not looking to criminalise them, we are looking to keep them safe. So it's important to keep that at the back of your head. There are other places as well that you can go to get some help and support, and places that children and young people themselves can go if they feel at risk, if they feel in danger. And one of those places is, of course, CEOP, who I've mentioned. They have on their website a big red report abuse button. The website is thinkyouknow.co.uk, and not only does it have some great information for all age groups delivered in an age appropriate way, not only does it have resources for parents and carers, but it also has this big red report abuse button. Now, that button is designed to allow any individual, an adult or a child or young person, to report direct to CEOP if they feel at risk from the way that somebody is behaving towards them, if they feel they are talking to somebody that is trying to groom them, if somebody is asking them for indecent images, or if they have shared an indecent image and somebody is using that against them. It's important that they know that there are places they can go to get that help. CEOP's always open. They judge each case on a case-by-case basis, and they are certainly not looking to arrest your child. We are just looking to keep them safe. Now, the problem is, how do you talk to your child or young person about all this? Because let's be honest, you mention the word sex and all our kids get a little bit weird and a little bit uncomfortable. It's hard enough in schools for teachers to have these kind of conversations as well, because kids just kind of see it as a little bit awkward. So to help you, CEOP have produced a series of 4 videos that you can watch on YouTube. It's called Nude Selfies, a guide for parents and carers, and over the 4-part video it explains why this behaviour occurs, but also some of the conversation starters that you have. Take a celebrity as an example and discuss when their pictures are suddenly released in the public domain. How would they feel? What could that celebrity do? And try and deflect that conversation towards another individual where you can have that devil's advocate conversation. But I do appreciate it is a very different world that we live in, and any way that we can have this conversation with our child is going to be absolutely vital. Okay. I am going to move on, but I will signpost you at the end for other places that you can go to learn a little more about this. And again, conversations are important, and there are some top tips that I think might be able to help reduce this a little. But please hold on until the end, and I'll promise I will share them with you. Okay, now we still have 2 more risks that I do want to quickly talk about. One of them is obviously bullying. Online bullying is a massive issue for both children, young people, and for us as adults. Any of us that have ever been on a news website or read the comments on groups on Facebook will know some individuals don't always talk in an appropriate way to others. There is a lot of challenging of opinions, to the point where you're no longer allowed to express one because you know somebody's going to disagree with you. The problem that we find is that the screens that we access the internet through are a bit of a barrier. Some of the things that we say and some of the things that children and young people say and do, they would never do in the real world. If you take a WhatsApp group, for example, would a child have another go at a child in a group full of 30 kids? Well, they might do that, but would they say the same thing in a classroom, even though exactly the same number of individuals would see it? Probably not. It's about perception again. Now, the issue with bullying is that it does have some really significant long-term consequences. And some of us have experienced bullying as children, so we understand the impact that it can have on the way you feel about yourself. And actually, that's something that we kind of want to challenge. We want to give kids a bit of a strategy to try and improve that resilience. Because with the best will in the world, as a gamer, I've experienced a lot of people that don't like it when you beat them in a game. I've seen the way that people talk to others online, and I know as an adult that actually having some of these skills is incredibly important to be able to survive the digital world. It is against the rules on every single app, site and service that you will go on, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. Okay, now I do want to take you back to some of the statistics that we have found last year when we asked all these students. Now we went into 63 different schools around the county asking over you can see there 3,738 responses about how many have experienced bullying either currently or in the past. Now, the good news around this is that 86.2% said they had not experienced bullying. That is brilliant, but the problem is that 13.8% is still quite a significant number of children and young people that have experienced bullying either now or in the past. And again, this can happen through apps, it can happen in the real world. We're not just saying that the internet is this bubble where things don't impact on the real world and the virtual world at the same time. We used to have a sanctuary when we were kids. When we got home, we'd shut the door and we know that the bully's not going to come round, knock on the door and continue the abuse. But with our children, that barrier, that sanctuary, has kind of gone a little bit now, because with their mobile devices, with their tablets, with their headsets, this abuse still can occur. So what we do in all year groups is we try and encourage some very, very simple tips and some very simple responses to this kind of thing happening. Now, I say simple because if you look at the list of 5 points, they all look quite straightforward, but actually 2 of them are incredibly difficult for most people to do, especially the top one, the trying not to respond. Because when somebody says something that you wholeheartedly disagree with, when they say something horrible to you, your natural human instinct is to respond. The problem is that is what that other person wants. They want to know that they've upset you. They want to know that the words that they've used, that the behaviour they've displayed have got to you. So actually not responding is incredibly difficult. But what we try and encourage children to do is to just step away. Before they write anything, before they get involved in arguments that will escalate and continue, and then people start picking sides, try and put the device down. Step away from the keyboard. Don't write that response when you're angry, because when you do, that's when things tend to escalate a little bit. But let's be brutally honest, most of the adults we know would probably really struggle with that top one. Can we do it all the time? No, we can't. But it's important to try and to encourage our children not to respond to these individuals. Now the next 3, little easier, little more straightforward. Anything written on the internet, anything shared can be copied. You can take a screenshot by pushing 2 buttons on your phone. If somebody is giving you abuse while you're wearing a headset playing video games, one of the greatest tips that I can ever share, and I can't take credit for this, it was from a parent in a school a few years back who shared it. All you do is unplug the headset from the controller and you can record whatever they say that comes out of the TV using your mobile device. That saves a copy of the behaviour. It saves a copy of what they've done, which a child can then use to show an adult, show a parent or carer. In some extreme cases, it's also something that can be shown to a member of staff in schools. But saving a copy, absolutely vital. Now, the next two, I am pleased to say, they are probably the most important two that I try and encourage children and young people everywhere to do, no matter what the issue, no matter what the circumstances, is always to report and block. Now, apps have rules, sites have rules, games have rules. One of those rules is be nice, otherwise we won't let you play anymore. By reporting the user to the app, site or service, what they can do is apply some sanctions. Now, it might be something as simple as sending them a message saying, you're a bit mean then, don't do it again. But sometimes it gets a bit more extreme. If you're playing a football game, FIFA, for example, if you swear over the headset because somebody had the audacity to score a goal against you, what they can do is actually stop you from talking over a headset. They can remove that feature because they want to safeguard their users, because it gets them bad press, and then if people don't play the game, it can jeopardise future releases. It is in their best interest to manage their own apps and the behaviour of their users. It's not perfect because the apps set the rules and the apps enforce them, but if you report it, most apps generally work on like a 3 or 4 strike system. So you might be that last report needed for that user to get a bit more of a severe sanction. But actually, even if you don't report them, blocking is by far the most sensible thing that you can do. You can push that block button and then that other person can't talk to you again. They can still try and type, but you can't hear them. And it works in games as well. If you block a user on Xbox or PlayStation, on Fortnite or Roblox, they cannot join you for any subsequent game. It's like they don't exist. Blocking is a really, really important thing to do, but children and young people find it quite difficult because there is a part of us that wants to know what other people are saying. But you can unblock people. It is not a permanent thing. You can temporarily block the individual, even if they're a friend, and unblock them when you feel that the issue has disappeared. Now, the last top tip I did say was also quite a difficult one because a lot of children don't feel comfortable talking to their adults about the things that go wrong. Children's biggest fear is that the technology will be taken away from them. And we have asked, would you tell a parent or carer if something went wrong on the internet? And quite a lot of them would say, not really, because they worry they get banned from the app. It would be used as an excuse to take them off it. Now, as a parent, I understand that 100%. You want to do something to safeguard your child. You want to take that risk away. But the problem is our children see it as a bit of a punishment. So what we do is we try and encourage children to talk to a trusted adult about that, whether it's you as a parent or carer, whether it's a member of staff at school, or whether it's some of the other places that I'll signpost you to in a short while. These are the kind of things that we want children to do, because if they don't tell anybody, then it just escalates and gets worse. And the impact on them can be quite severe the longer it goes on. Okay. Now, there is one last risk that I do want to mention, and this one is all about content. It's all about the kind of things that our children can access online and how they're accessing it. Now, content is a bit of a difficult one because with the best will in the world, YouTube is a fantastic resource, but not all the videos are age appropriate. TikTok can be a little bit fun, but some of the songs are quite X-rated and suggestive in a sexualized manner. But that leaves us with a bit of an issue because kids still want to access these kind of apps. They still want to see the things that their friends see, whether it's Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, whether it's Stranger Things on Netflix. Some of the things that they watch may be appropriate for 16, 17-year-olds, may not be appropriate for 7 or 8-year-olds. Now, one of the things we do find at the moment in schools is that children are growing up with a different understanding to how the world works and what people present as true on the internet. we're also finding that a lot of children are accessing content which is completely not age appropriate. And most of the time, this kind of stuff happens accidentally. It's not something that they actively seek. We do know there is a lot of adult content in the form of pornographic material. We also know on things like YouTube that there are a lot of videos that are quite scary and unsettling. And we know from a couple of years ago that a lot of viral fake sensations like Momo caused a lot of issues and a lot of upset amongst children and young people. And that was just a story that somebody shared that kind of caught traction in this country and was shared through the media and caused a lot of anxiety amongst parents and carers. Now, this is where some of the problems do arise in the fact that children can access technology from almost anywhere in their household. And one of the things we always find interesting is when we ask them, when you go to bed, do you still have access to your mobile device? Because when they're sat downstairs with you, when you're all about in family settings, what we find is it's a bit easier to keep an eye on the kind of content that they're accessing. But children do go to bed with their mobile phone next to them. Some of them will do the sensible thing, like all of us, stick it on Do Not Disturb. I don't want a phone call until 7 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes it's got to be 9 o'clock at a weekend because we'd all like a bit of a lie-in. But what happens when they get a text message at 2 o'clock? What happens if one of their friends has watched a video and decides to share it with them online? What happens when they watch that video? How much impact is it going to have on their sleep? Now, what we did is we did ask this question in Lincolnshire. Now, this is amongst teenagers. This is the same survey that we did January last year, and we did ask them, how many of you have access to a mobile device after you go to bed? And nearly 2 out of every 3 said, I do. Now, the problem with that, as parents and carers, is that some of them may use it as their alarm clock. I'll be honest, I'm one of those people because I need something to get me up in the morning. But how can you safeguard your child against this kind of very adult world that our children now live in? Because most of the apps they use were not designed for our children in the first place. Now, I'm pleased to say that there are loads and loads of things that you can do. There are some physical things that you can do to safeguard, which I'll explain in a sec. But I want to talk about the more technological solutions, the parental controls that a lot of things come with. Any mobile device will have some form of parental controls on it. Android and Apple devices, you can set time limits, you can restrict their access to app stores. You can turn off certain features if you wanted to and lock it all with a PIN code. The same with things like Xboxes and PlayStations. You can set time limits, so when you say you can play on the Xbox for an hour, it genuinely means it's just an hour, because after that, they need to get you to unlock it. Appreciate this is going to make me quite unpopular amongst a lot of children and young people in Lincolnshire, but guides to do that can be found at this website, internetmatters.org. But it's not just devices that can have parental controls applied to them. Things like Netflix, iPlayer, even YouTube have safety settings to stop your children from accessing age-inappropriate content. If you have a younger child, 3, 4, 5 years old, and all they want to do is watch Peppa Pig or Ben and Holly, well then there are apps like Kids YouTube, which will only show videos that are appropriate for their age. So one of the things that I do think we should look into is some of these controls that are in place. Now, I'm going to be brutally honest, your children have more time on their hands than you do. So any controls that you put in place, they're absolutely going to try and get around. But why not try and include them in the discussion? You can put gaming age limits on Xboxes and PlayStations, but explain why. Explain what your worries are and explain why you're kind of doing it. And that kind of brings me to the last bit that I do want to mention, and that is some of my top tips. Now, we can talk a lot to children about the risk, but when they get to a certain age, they do become risk takers by default. So one of the things that we need to do as parents and carers is to have some very, very simple ground rules. When they go out and play with their friends, we always set rules around where they can go and what time they need to come back, and make sure that they contact us if things change. Well, why not agree some simple household rules? Things like the kind of apps that they can use, the games that they can play, the kind of things that they are allowed to post on the internet, and the kind of things that they're not allowed. Come up with just a simple set of ground rules, but explain to them what your worries are, what your concerns are, and help them to understand where you're coming from. But one of the most important ones when it comes to all of these risks is where our children can access their devices. Having devices in a bedroom behind a closed door can sometimes increase that risk. If an individual is trying to trick them, if somebody they're talking to is trying to manipulate them online, one of the questions they'll ask is, where are you? Who's around you? Now, if they say, I'm sat downstairs and I've got my grown-ups next to me, that greatly reduces the likelihood of something untoward happening. But if they're in their bedroom on their own and the door's shut, would they feel comfortable actually leaving their bedroom and coming to tell you what's happened? If your child is used to having their device in their room, and maybe this is a bridge too far, because it does get more difficult as they get older, because they want a certain level of privacy, why not have an open door policy? So you can use this device, but the door has to remain open. But this makes it easier for you to spot when things are going wrong. If their behaviour changes, if they're less likely to look at inappropriate stuff, even if it's accidental, if they know there's an adult in the room around them. Obviously, as I've mentioned, parental controls are hugely important, but so are privacy settings. And one of the things that we try and encourage children and young people to have is a private account. Now, this kind of goes against a lot of what their friends will tell them to do. Having a public account means you can get famous, and the more followers that you have, the more popular you are. Well, we all know that's not true. And actually, having a private account means that some things become safer to share, and you're sharing it with the people that matter. Encourage them to have a private account, but if they won't, find that middle ground. Have a member of your family, a cool aunt or cool uncle, have their grandma add them as a friend. Somebody that can monitor who they're adding as a friend and the kind of stuff that they're sharing. Not to spy on them, but merely just a watching eye. But the most vital thing that we can encourage our children to do is to talk to somebody when things go wrong. It is the most important thing, but it's also the most difficult because of that fear factor around what we as parents and carers will do. So what I want to leave you with before I come to any questions is just some places that you can go to get some advice for yourself, but also places we can signpost our children to. Now, thinkyouknow.co.uk, run by the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Centre, is just a brilliant website. It is divided into Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3 and 4 across all the age ranges, but it also has a section for parents and carers. So that if you want some advice, if you want some information, you can find it there. And all the information around grooming, around sexting, is all contained within the parent section of that. Please learn some more about it, and don't forget that big red button exists. Internet Matters has loads of information around the technical side of it, about how to set up parental controls, about what different apps do and how they work. And they do get a lot of individuals who are experts in the field of online safety to give information that will help you keep your child safe online. But there are other places that we can direct our children and ourselves to. Childline is one of the numbers that we actively share around Lincolnshire, because we'd like to think that a child will come and talk to us as their parents or carers, or that they will talk to a member of staff in school. But they may not do that. They may not feel comfortable. Childline is a service that is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whether it's 2 o'clock Christmas Day morning or 7 o'clock Easter Sunday. There is always somebody at the end of the phone, or if you go to their website, and it's just a simple Google Childline to find it, then you can chat to somebody through their site as well. They're not judgmental, they are truly confidential. So as a parent, the hardest thing you have to get around is the fact that they're not going to tell us what our children talk about, but it is a valuable resource because they will give your child advice on what they think they can do to keep them safe. And let's be honest, most of our kids know the number because they've probably threatened us with it at some point. But for a lot of children and young people, certainly as they get a bit older, they see Childline as a service for younger guys and girls. So there are other services as they get into adulthood where they can go to talk about these kind of things. Samaritans is also a service that's available for young adults to talk through their issues, because there is always somebody there that you can get help from. There's always somebody there that you can talk to. And we have to remember that a lot of the risk on the internet can have a huge impact on our mental well-being, which is why Young Minds, as the last service that I want to signpost you to, is also an excellent resource. It is all about mental health of young people and young adults. It encourages things like mindfulness. It has articles on different issues, especially the kind of anxiety that a lot of children and young people feel around the current circumstances that we find ourselves in. And mental health is one of the biggest issues that we find occurs. It has the biggest impact around online safety. So please get some information from some of these sites and services. Okay. Now, I've seen the time and it's 8:20, and I do want to say, first and foremost, thank you so much to everybody that has joined us, both in the live stream earlier today and the live stream right now. It's been absolutely fantastic for you, everybody, to come and join me for doing this. One thing that I am going to ask, I am going to turn to questions, and you don't have to ask questions, but I do want to give you the opportunity to ask away. I'm just going to share a link in the chat, which is for our feedback form. This is the first time we have ever done anything like this. In the past, we've kind of delivered this stuff face to face, but again, given the current circumstances, we don't know whether that is something that is going to be possible at any point in the foreseeable future. But if you have enjoyed it and found it useful, that is absolutely brilliant. Tell us what you learned. Tell us whether you enjoyed it. But most importantly, tell us the next time we run it, how can we do it better? Have we talked about the things that you wanted us to talk about? Okay. Now, I am going to now give the opportunity to open up the floor. If anybody has any questions or anything they want to know, I'm going to remain on the chat for the next few minutes, just to give anybody the opportunity to ask something. I do apologise, there's a bit of a lag of about 40 seconds between me saying stuff and you seeing it, but please ask away. And for everybody, again, thank you so much for giving up your time to take part in this. These videos are all going to be on the Lincolnshire Safeguarding Children Partnership YouTube channel. There are lots of other videos on there around some of the online risk, around parental controls, around things like video game ratings. If you have a child or young person, if you have a child that's maybe at nursery age, there is a video on there called The Funny Tummy Song, which I managed to persuade a couple of my colleagues to join me in. It uses Makaton signing, and it gives just a few simple tips encouraging our children to talk to us from a very, very young age. So please check that out. If you do have any concerns about any children, there is obviously, you can get in touch with CEOP, with Lincolnshire Police, and with the Lincolnshire County Council Customer Service Centre. And I do want to say just thank you. I can see people writing some comments. Thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure. So if nobody has any questions, and like I say, I will wait around, I'm going to bid you farewell. Have a really, really great night. And I look forward to seeing you all again at some point, and teaching your children at some point as well. So thank you so much, everybody. Don't forget the feedback, and I'll just wait here and bid you all farewell. So thank you very much. I'll sign off in a couple of minutes. So get the kettle on. Thank you. That's great. Thank you, everybody. So this video will be available. So please, if there's anybody that you want to watch it, it will be available on the Lincolnshire Safeguarding Children Partnership in about 5 minutes' time. So thank you very much. Right, I'm going to take this opportunity then, ladies and gentlemen, to bid you all farewell. Thank you once again. I look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you very much. Goodbye.